1960. In the old joke, the marriage counselor tells the couple, who never talks anymore, to go to a jazz club, because at a jazz club, everyone talks during the bass solo. But of course, no one starts talking just because of a bass solo, or any other solo for that matter. The quieter bass solo just reveals the people in the club who have been talking all along. The same ones you can hear on some well-known recordings. Bill Evans, for example, who is opening a new door on the piano while some guy chaps up his date at one of the little tables in the back. I have listened to that album so many times, I can anticipate the moment of his drunken laugh as if it were a strange note in the tune. And so, anonymous man, you have become part of my listening. Your romance, a romance lost in the past, and a reminder somehow that each member of that trio has died since then, and maybe so have you, and sadly, maybe she. This has a little epigraph from a poet we were mentioning in class today, Wisława Szymborska. And her poem is called The Day After Without Us. It's about, and a line from the poem is, the morning is expected to be cool and foggy. And the title of the poem is Helium. To imagine what the weather will be like on the day following your death appears on that list of abilities that serve to distinguish us from the animals, as if walking around on two legs laughing to ourselves were not enough to close the case. In these forecasts, it is usually raining, the way it would be in the movies, but it could be sparkling clear or gray and windy, with snow expected in the afternoon. Much will continue to occur after I die, seems to be the message here. The rose will nod its red or yellow head, sunbeams will break into the gloomy woods. And this is what I would happen to be thinking about as I drove through a gauntlet of signs on a road leading into a small town in Pennsylvania. There was Bob's Transmission, the Airport, the Bountiful Buffet, Balloon to Signs by Pauline, Echo Echo Ristorante, and Majestic China Garden, to name a few. And when I realized that all these places would still be in business following my death, such a jolt of mortality shot up my spine that I vowed at that moment to exercise more and stick to a better diet, if only to outlive Balloon Designs by Pauline, and maybe even Pauline herself, though it would be enough if she simply left town. The important thing is that her store be boarded up before the day after I die, the sign askew, maybe some letters missing, and the last birthday balloon released long ago, rising above a party on the lawn, then disappearing into the sky as dark, heavy clouds roll in and a drop of rain is felt on the cheek of some child. Speaking of children, well, here's, well, great, thank you. Cheers. A poem called Silence. Excuse me. Silence. Now is the time to say what you have to say. The room is quiet, the whirring fan has been unplugged, and the girl who is tapping a pencil on her desktop has been removed. So tell us what is on your mind. We want to hear the sound of your foliage, the unraveling of your toolkit, your songs of loneliness, your songs of hurt. The trains are motionless on the tracks, the ships at rest in the harbor. The dogs are cocking their heads, and the gods are peering down from their balloons. The town is hushed, and everyone here has a copy. So tell us about your parents, your father behind the steering wheel, your cruel mother at the sink. Let's hear about all the clouds you saw and all the trees. Read the poem you brought with you tonight, The ocean has stopped sloshing around, and even Beethoven is sitting up in his deathbed, his cold hearing horn inserted in one ear. Ideal conditions. Now here's a subject I wanted to address for some time. It's a poem called Only Child. I was saying that being a poet involves no interest in other people. And that being an only child, starting out that way gives you a big head start on that lack of interest. Only child. I never wished for a sibling, boy or girl. Center of the universe, I had the back of my parents' car all to myself. I could look out one window, then slide over to the other window, without any quibbling over territorial rights. And whenever I played a game on the floor of my bedroom, it was always my turn. Not until my parents entered their 90s did I long for a sister, a nurse I named Mary, who worked in a hospital 5 minutes away from their house, and who would drop everything, even a thermometer, whenever I called. Be there in a jiff and on my way were two of her favorite expressions, and mine. And now that the parents are dead, I wish I could meet Mary for coffee every now and then at that Italian place with the blue awning, where we could sit and reminisce, even on rainy days. I would gaze into her green eyes and see my parents, my mother looking out of Mary's right eye, and my father staring out of her left, which would remind me of what an odd duck I was as a child, a little prince and a loner who would break off from his gang of friends on a Saturday and find a hedge to hide behind. And I would tell Mary about all that too, and never embarrass her by asking about her non-existence. And maybe we would have another espresso and a pastry, and I would always pay the bill and walk her home. I've written a lot of poems about dogs, but now there's a cat in our house that shows no sign of leaving, fed on a regular basis. It's a very, we have a strange relationship. My mother used to say that the reason that cats and dogs never said anything is that they didn't have anything to say. But this cat looks like she has something to say, but just forgot it. And so I stare at her, and she looks up at me, and I give her a chance to think of what she had to say. And then she blinks, and then that means that she thought of something else to say, but forgot that too. This is at least my projection of what she's thinking about. But just her being in the house is enough to have found her way into a poem or two. And this is called Lucky Cat. It's a law as immutable as the ones governing bodies in motion and bodies at rest, that a cat picked up will never stay in the place where you choose to set it down. I bet you'd be happy on the sofa, or this hassock, or this knitted throw pillow, are a few examples of bets you are bound to lose. The secret of winning, I have found, is never to bet against the cat, but on the cat, preferably with another human being, who, unlike the cat, is likely to be carrying money. And I cannot think of a better time to thank our cat for her obedience to that law, thus turning me into a consistent winner. She's a pure black one, quite impossible to photograph, and prone to disappearing into the night, or even into the thin shadows of noon. Such an amorphous blob of blackness is she. The only way to tell she is approaching is to notice the two little yellow circles of her eyes, then only one circle when she is walking away with her tail raised high. Something like the lantern signals of Paul Revere, American silversmith, galloping patriot. That's her. And this is called a list of ancient pastimes, just meditation on what humans would do shortly after they would qualify as being human. The list of ancient pastimes. First must have come listening to the wind or regarding the movements of animals, then monitoring the stars, and sometimes after that scrutinizing fire. But somewhere in there belongs watching the progress of a river from an elevated bank, studying the pooling near the edges, the way the smooth or rippled current divulges the secret contours of the unseen bottom, and the effects of skylight on the surface, all the elongated colors of the flow. Today it is my turn on the shore. I flatten the tall grass with my pacing. I lock my elbows and lean back, listening to the liquid rush. I scribble in a notebook, drink from a bottle of water. I find a perfect stone and fling it out into the middle. Sometimes I see something being carried down, a cracked off branch, a bucket on its side in the late afternoon, or as the dusk gets heavy, the head of Orpheus bobbing along, singing softly to the overhanging trees, or the body of Ophelia, held up by her voluminous outspread clothes, the light so faint now it is difficult to tell if the red and yellow petals are embroidered into her gown or real, floating on the darkness of the water. Okay. Here's something that poets get a lot. We get this a lot. It's right here. I don't think fiction writers, well, you can tell me later, but I don't think anyone gets this with poets. It's called the suggestion box. It all began fairly early in the day, at the coffee shop as it turned out, when the usual waitress said, "I bet you're going to write a poem about this," after she had knocked a cup of coffee into my lap. Then later in the morning, I was told by a student that I should write a poem about the fire drill that was going on as we all stood on the lawn outside our building. In the afternoon, a woman I barely knew said, "You could write a poem about that," pointing to a dirigible that was passing slowly overhead. And if all that were not enough, a friend turned to me as we walked past a man whose face was covered with tattoos and said, "I see a poem coming." Why is everyone being so helpful? I wondered that evening by the shore of a lake. Maybe I should write a poem about all the people who think they know what I should be writing poems about. It was just then, in the fading light, that I spotted a pair of ducks emerging from a cluster of reeds to paddle out to open water, the female glancing over her russet shoulder just in time to see me searching my pockets for a pen. I knew it, she quacked with a bit of a brogue, but who can blame you for following your heart, she went on. Now go write a lovely poem about me and the mister. So they're always wrong. You're always wrong. Stop doing that. There's always too much excitement, like fire drills and dirigibles. It's all too much. The pulse is too high. Let me read a few little poems. We were talking about the joy of a little poem and how it could be expanded. Here, you know that advice, kill your darlings, it's been attributed, I don't know, I think it was Faulkner or somebody, but it's been attributed to everybody. And this is called Taking the Advice. I have gathered onto one page all the darlings I need to kill. Now, how to go about this so no one will hear their screams. And this is another cat-inspired poem called Predator. It takes only a minute to bury a wren, 2 trowels full of dirt, and he's in. The cat at the threshold is longer in doubt, deciding if she'll stay or go out. I thought it was funny that we talk about the naked eye. You know, we never say the naked ear or the naked eye. There was no lid to clothe the naked eye, so she covered herself with some scenery, a meadow she liked to look at when the other eye wasn't looking. And this one is actually almost word by word, factually true. It's called Feedback. The woman who wrote from Phoenix after my reading there to tell me they were all still talking about it just wrote again to tell me that they had stopped. I think it's called passive aggression. I'm not really sure of that. And then another little one it's called I call it to Thomas Stearns Eliot, but I think properly it should be called to J. Alfred Prufrock. I just dared to eat a really big peach, as ripe as it could be, and I have on a pair of plaid shorts and a blue t-shirt with a hole in it, and little rivers of juice are running down my chin now and dripping onto the pool deck. What is your problem, man? Okay. I'm wasting precious time here. I have a poem called The First Straw, and the first line is, "The camel felt nothing." But then it stops being funny, so I don't know about that one. In the room of 1,000 miles. I like writing about where I am, where I happen to be sitting, the humidity or the clouds, the scene outside the window, a pink tree in blossom, a neighbor walking his small, nervous dog. And if I am drinking a cup of tea at the time, or a small glass of whiskey, I will find a line to put that on. My wife hands these poems back to me with a sigh. She thinks I ought to be opening up my aperture to let in the wild rhododendrons of Ireland, the sun-blanched stadiums of Rome, that water clock in Bruges, the world beyond my inkwell. I tell her I will try again and travel back to my desk where the chair is turned to the window. I think about the furniture of history. I consider the globe, the lights of its cities. I visualize a lion rampant on an iron shield, a quiet battlefield, a granite monument. Then, just between you and me, I take a swallow of cold tea, and in the manner of the ancient Chinese, pick up my thin pen and write down that bird I hear outside, the one that sings, pauses, then sings again. Thank you. And here's a few more. Here's a poem called Cheerios. We were talking about breakfast cereal yesterday. Cheerios. One bright morning in a restaurant in Chicago, as I waited for my eggs and toast, I opened the Tribune, only to discover that I was the same age as Cheerios. Indeed, I was a few months older than Cheerios, for today the newspaper announced was the 70th birthday of Cheerios, whereas mine had occurred earlier in the year. Already I could hear them whispering behind my stooped and threadbare back, "Why, that dude's older than Cheerios." The way they used to say, "Why, that's as old as the hills." Only the hills are much older than Cheerios, or any American breakfast cereal, and more noble and enduring are the hills, I surmised, as a bar of sunlight illuminated my orange juice. Here, I'm addressing the subject of adolescence, big subject. And the poem has a specific recipient. It's called "To My Favorite 17-Year-Old High School Girl." Do you realize that if you had started building the Parthenon on the day you were born, you would be all done in only one more year? Of course, you couldn't have done that all alone, so never mind. You're fine just as you are. You are loved for simply being yourself. But did you know that at your age, Judy Garland was pulling down $150,000 a picture, Joan of Arc was leading the French army to victory, and Blaise Pascal had cleaned up his room? No, I mean, he had invented the calculator. Of course, there will be time for all that later in your life, after you come out of your room and begin to blossom, or at least pick up all your socks. For some reason, I keep remembering that Lady Jane Grey was Queen of England when she was only 15. But then she was beheaded, so never mind her as a role model. But a few centuries later, when he was your age, Franz Schubert was doing the dishes for his family. But that did not keep him from composing 2 symphonies, 4 operas, and 2 complete masses as a youngster. But of course, that was in Austria at the height of Romantic lyricism, not here in the suburbs of Cleveland. Frankly, who cares if Annie Oakley was a crack shot at 15, or if Maria Callas debuted as Tosca at 17? We think you are special by just being you, playing with your food and staring into space. By the way, I lied about Schubert doing the dishes, but that doesn't mean he never helped out around the house. I'll read one more, and most of you poets know that there's a kind of poem where a poet, it's based on a previous poem by somebody else, and it's a sign of the poet's indebtedness. And the etiquette involved there is one uses the same title, and then right under the title you put the expression after the name of the original poet, so after Whitman, after Neruda, whatever. So I wanted to write a poem. It was a kind of modern version of a beautiful poem by the Chinese poet Li Po. His poem is called "Drinking Alone." And I wrote dutifully "Drinking Alone," and then after Li Po, and then was struck by the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. But after some staring, this was the result. Drinking alone after Li Po. This is not after Li Po, the way the state is after me for neglecting to pay all my taxes, nor the way I am after the woman in front of me on the long line at the post office. Li Po, I am not saying after you, as I stand holding open one of the heavy glass doors that divide the centuries in a long corridor of glass doors. No, the only way this is after you is in the way they say, it's just one thing after another, like the way I will pause to raise a glass of wine to you after I finish writing this poem. So let me get back to sitting in the wind alone among the pines with a pencil in my hand. After all, you had your turn, and mine will soon be done. Then someone else will sit here after me. Thank you.